Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, one and all, to a brand new edition of The Quinn Spinn. I'm your host, Quinn, at least that's how I'm known here on the program, and I'm back here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and more for another rousing and riveting installment of the official podcast of Underground Music Collective. And you just heard at the top of the show, Revel 9's All I Become. That's been our opening theme song since the great year of 2014. And it will be until the very end of days. And I am privileged to be joined here today, back in Studio A for this episode. We're actually not on the official interview set. Had a little bit of technical difficulty. But Zhaklina, patiently waiting it out as we figured out a solution, and is here to chat about all things music and mental health. So thank you, first of all, for your patience. And also thank you for joining us here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I introed you a little bit, but now I'm going to give you the chance to tell the people about yourself. And I do that by asking the three standard questions. Those questions, of course, being, who are you? What are your passions? And why on earth would you want to come on the Quinn Spinn?
Okay. My name is Zhaklina Spencer, and I go by Zhaklina, my first name for my artist name. I am an alternative pop rock artist, originally from New York. I've been in Nashville since 2018, and I advocate for mental health through my music, my branding, and my platform. Next question was passions. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm obviously really passionate about music. That's probably the first passion that I remember having. My parents say I was singing before I could talk. I'm incredibly passionate about God. I am a Christian, and I really believe strongly that everything I do in life is rooted in my faith. And I'm also very passionate about mental health, which is why I advocate for it, and art in general. Mm-hmm. Third question.
Why on earth would you want to come on this show of all the shows?
Why? I love connecting with new people. This is my first time meeting you in person, so that's really exciting to me. I enjoy having conversations around art and creativity, and getting to talk about those things is just so much fun to me. And then being able to talk more about mental health is really special as well.
Of course. And a super important topic, too, especially, and we'll get into this, especially, in recent years, ever since COVID, it's been a major topic, among those in the creative space, but also, like, just within the music industry, with everything we went through, through the course of the pandemic, it definitely brought a lot of things to light. And so we'll get into that. But first, take us back a little further, Zhaklina. As far as your background, what inspired you to get on the creative path? People, places, experiences, influences?
Yeah. My first influence was Celine Dion. I remember watching the Titanic when I was a really little girl and just falling in love with My Heart Will Go On, and just wanting to learn how to sing that song and belting it out. I lived in this 1-bedroom apartment with my mom and my sister in the Bronx, and I would just be screaming my lungs out to that song, trying to hit all those notes. Probably really annoying the neighbors, definitely annoying my sister and my mom. But Celine Dion was definitely my first idol, I would say. Then I just found myself really inspired by Christina Aguilera, Avril Lavigne, so many powerful female artists. And then a pivotal moment for me was in middle school when I discovered Evanescence, and fell in love with Amy Lee.
Power.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, she's just such a queen, and an inspiration. And Evanescence's songs are just so unique to me. I just feel like there aren't a whole lot of songs that are written in the way that they write theirs. And that was something that also grabbed me, was like not only Amy Lee's voice, but just the songs and the messages. They just moved me and allowed me to explore emotions and feelings as a middle schooler that I felt like not a lot of people were talking about at that time and at that age.
Yeah. And the presentation too of Evanescence, very theatrical too.
Yes.
And there was definitely something unique about that, like the theatrical kind of dark, semi-gothic, vibe they were putting forth. Like, it was different from like a lot of the like pop punk stuff, a lot of the emo. Like, it was its own lane.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and then you like explore the way they do their music videos. It's just incredible. So much love and respect for Evanescence. And then as I entered high school, in middle school, I guess, I did start exploring theater and performance. My first musical theater I was in was Bye Bye Birdie. And that was really fun. I was so nervous. And then I started doing it even more in high school, started competing in a cappella groups, competitive a cappella groups, and just dove into just being a theater nerd. And I loved it. And that was really what helped me hone in on my artistry and my creative side. I started writing when I was 11. And I recently discovered my first songwriting book that was gifted to me by my Aunt Tara. And the first song I wrote makes no sense, but it's the first song, and I read the lyrics, and it was like, "Hey, you hit me like a crazy ball. Ow, that hurt." And I was like, what was I thinking? I don't know, but that's the first song
we gotta
I
start
wrote.
somewhere.
That's where I started.
We gotta start
and
somewhere.
I'm just like, okay. So it's cute to look back on like 11-year-old me trying to make like a song, and like all of the growth. But I have so much respect for that little girl. Just like, this is where I am. This is where I'm starting, and I'm gonna make a song here. And then as I just grew through all of my theater experiences, my choir experiences, my vocal lessons, my songwriting also grew. I really loved English in school, literature, and that helped me really hone in on my writing skills as well. I had amazing teachers. Dove into college, and though I didn't major in music, I was still heavily involved in music as I was in school. More a cappella groups, more performances, more shows, and a lot more writing. And then in 2015, my brother actually encouraged me to enter a radio station competition. And I was like, well, I don't really have any of my own music out. And he was like, you should still just go for it. And I was like, okay. And I did. And I ended up winning. And it was with K104.7 in New York. And I ended up winning a spot at their music festival, K-Fest, got to meet all these record execs, got a lot of really great advice on how to start pursuing my career as an artist. And that was the moment for me that I started really turning all of my creative endeavors into a professional experience versus something that I was incredibly passionate about and definitely poured a lot of my time into, but like really was like, okay, I want to really go for this in like the professional industry and in a professional way. And so I just started taking it even more seriously after I won that competition and just had this experience of like, I can do this.
So what brought Nashville into your view? Why Nashville? We moved here in the same year, by the way, 2018.
Oh, cool.
From the Northeast. I moved here from Pennsylvania. So class of 2018 moving to Nashville. But what was it about the city that made you choose Nashville over, say, staying in New York or going to LA or somewhere else?
I love that question. I love this story, too. I went on a 2-month road trip around the United States. And part of that road trip was definitely exploring really cool places, but the biggest thing for me was trying to figure out where I was going to relocate for my music. I really loved Washington State. I thought it was gorgeous, but it was just so far away for me from New York and my family and everything I knew on the East Coast. That was just too far. I couldn't just like drive to go see my family. Right. Colorado was also really cool.
Colorado's amazing.
I love it. And I like just want to go there all the time. But I'm not going to lie. I felt like the music scene wasn't as like big as it is in other cities.
Yeah.
And it's so far from the beach. And though I love the mountains and I
Mhm.
love all of the nature that they have there, and there's a lot of really cool things about their community as well. It just didn't feel like a place for me to like call home necessarily.
Yeah.
I never saw myself living in Nashville because I initially thought it was just like for country music.
Which most people have that perception, yeah.
So when I came here, I was pleasantly surprised by the variety of artists and musicians that Nashville has and attracts. There's people here from all over the world, and you've got all kinds of music. I meet hip hop artists all the time,
Yep.
R&B artists all the time. Christian music is very big as well, but there's a lot of variety in the Christian world out here too, which I
Right.
think is really cool. The rock and alternative world here is awesome. Lots of really special and unique people here that are pursuing that lane. But I think like just seeing the community mindset that people have in Nashville is what stood out and made me want to come here as opposed to like LA or staying in New York City. I don't think I have ever been in a city that is as serious about music and has as much going on with music, like, you know, competitively when you compare it to New York and LA, like, you know, these are like the big music cities. There's a reason we're called Music City, but that also fosters like genuine connection, genuine relationships, genuine spaces for community. Like, I think about 3/4 of the people that come out to my shows are other artists.
Yeah.
And I cannot say that in any other city.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
nobody supports each other the way Nashville artists do.
Yeah, there's always been something very special, because we moved here around the same time, like, about that community aspect. And what I notice is it's a very pay it forward culture.
Yeah.
Here. Like, when I was getting ready to move here, I had a lot of people willing to show me the ropes and willing to show me what Nashville is, introduce me to people. And I'm like, I still encounter that. Now that I've been here, like, I find myself being able to step into that role with people who are new, kind of offer some insight into what Nashville actually is. And you're right, like, there is that perception that people on the outside have, like, oh, well, you know, I remember when I was getting ready to move here, well, I hope you like country music. And it is everything. It's everything. Like, country definitely has its foothold here, you know, especially down on Lower Broadway, which, you know, I call the Nash Vegas embassy of Nashville. Like, everything else in Nashville, everything around there is so diverse. You know, of course, you know, you have a great thriving hip hop community here that just had a chance to be featured over at the Big Bash downtown for New Year's Eve. You have all those genres, all those different styles and perspectives that you mentioned in this city, and it is very much community minded. Even as we grow, like, there definitely is that close knit sensibility that, like, you know, being from the Northeast, being from New Jersey originally, I can tell you're not going to find as easily in New York. There's just too much and too many people to find it there. In LA, I've never been to LA personally, but, like, I hear much the same, and, you know, it's so sprawling, you know, like, here you're really in a compact, like, 10-mile radius for the most part, you know, unless you're out in Brentwood or Franklin, like, you're here. And, like, I find when I'm in Nashville, like, I don't, you know, leave like a 15-minute, 20-minute radius from East Nashville most of the time that I'm here, because everything I need is right here. Everyone I know is right here, you know, and it really is like this special, close-knit, like, small town vibe, you know, in this city that continues to grow and have bigger things happen.
I absolutely agree. And I love the way that you worded that.
Why, thank you. You know, I do a podcast for 10 years, you know.
You're kind of good at this.
You learn how to use your words, you know. But anyway, I do want to shift focus to the mental health aspect of your platform, because it's a very important aspect of not only your platform, but, as we mentioned, especially since COVID and the ensuing years since, like, so important, you know, to have these conversations among musicians, creatives, and just among people. So for you personally, why is it such an important point of emphasis for you and your platform?
there's two facets to that for me. The first is personal. I have always been intrigued by psychology. I took a lot of psychology courses in school and found it so fascinating. However, I didn't start pursuing mental health per se until college, after I had gone through some really challenging experiences in my life that I guess you could call rock bottom. And after hitting several walls, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. I'm like, all right, I got to do something different. So I found myself in my first counseling session as a junior in college. I believe I was a junior in college. And I just remember like feeling so great, not fixed, not necessarily like everything was better, but like I had like shed a level of pain after my first like experience with therapy. And like, whoa, is this what healing feels like?
Right.
And it was so new to me. And I will never forget my first counselor and the compassion that he showed me and how he listened to me. I'm like, whoa, this is like next level listening skills. So I started diving into the field of mental health and like trying to learn more about it myself, trying to figure out like what kind of therapists there are out there, what kind of therapy would work for me. And it took me a little bit of time to really get into it consistently. I had tried different therapists, tried going to different therapists through my mid-20s, and had a lot of other really hard things in my life happen as I was also trying to navigate my music career and also pay bills as an adult out of college.
That's real. That is real.
So, going through heartbreak and different relationship situations, different family dynamic situations. And then in 2017, I felt myself really leaning into diving fully into my mental health journey. So I stepped out of a lot of circles that didn't encourage that and started spending a lot more time by myself. And really leaning into what I needed. Started writing music for that space. The first song that came out of that was Solitude. And it was just all about how I think a lot of times we can lose ourselves. And as important as community is, so is a relationship with yourself. And being involved in healthy community is also incredibly important, and I definitely can't say that I was always involved in healthy community.
I love that point, because I think it's so important for us to know ourselves, so we know the energy that's right for us, right? How can you know that if you haven't first like sat with yourself? And I think it's easy in this society to not sit with yourself. There are so many distractions, so many things to give us that quick fix, that quick hit of dopamine, and it's so important to take a step back from all of that and be like, who am I? I think we all have these moments in our lives where we just like look up and we don't really even know who we are. And so has there been anything, like that in particular that kind of like sparked, you stepping away from those circles, or, choosing to pursue, a different path, choosing to pursue this path of knowing yourself better?
Yeah, I had a really challenging romantic relationship that I was in, and there was a lot of toxic stuff that happened in that relationship. There was a lot of abuse, and I just found myself like asking myself if like this was the life that I wanted, and if this was who I was, and if this person that I was with was influencing me to be my best. And the answer was, no, this isn't the life I want. No, this isn't who I am. And no, this person is not influencing me to be my best. And though I take full responsibility for the choices that I have made, because nobody can make you do anything, I do believe that the people you surround yourself with can heavily influence the choices that you make. So I was drinking more than I usually do, smoking more weed, like just doing things that I felt like were not who Zhaklina was, and also definitely weren't allowing me to focus on my career the ways that I needed to. So I distanced myself from that person, from a lot of like people who were kind of like that. Basically the party mindset that you see a lot of in college.
Yeah.
And I found myself really leaning into like, okay, like I got to be strong and figuring out my boundaries. So one of the biggest lessons that I've had in just kind of discovering who Zhaklina is the lesson of boundaries, because I needed to figure out what my boundaries were. And when you're in relationships with people who don't give you the space to even have boundaries, don't respect your boundaries, it's really difficult to be able to like understand that. So I figured out what my boundaries were, and then I had to grow strong enough in not only setting them, but maintaining them. And that's just like a process that I'm still growing in. But after leaving that relationship and then like starting to go to therapy even more consistently, and now I go very regularly, I realized that a lot of my patterns actually stemmed from childhood.
There it is.
So, yes. So, you know, all of the experiences that we go through in life, it's kind of like a connect the dots series. And I definitely have a lot of trauma from childhood that, though I like knew in my head was like not okay, I never fully like reckoned with in my heart, and therapy has been helping me do that. And I realized, okay, so I'm bad at setting boundaries because I was never taught how to do that, and I was never respected as my own person growing up. Like I was more so just like an extended part of like the people in my family versus like my own person. There was a lot of codependency, a lot of generational trauma, a lot of culture differences too. So on my mom's side of the family, they are from former Yugoslavia, Muslim, and I am the firstborn in America. My mom is an immigrant. So there was just a lot that like being born into this country with my mom's side of the family, just having a lot of cultural differences, and then me seeing how a lot of my friends live their lives and things just being really different for me. Growing up, I didn't fully understand. So and I never really had the space to like vocalize my confusion, my hurt, my pain. So I always felt like there was something wrong with me. And I always felt like this is a part of me that like I shouldn't be experiencing, and I should be able to just like roll with the punches and be like my grandparents and my cousins and just deal with it. And I'm a very sensitive person. I'm a highly sensitive personality. So that was never in the cards for me, just rolling with the punches.
Right.
And like every time like I would cry, I would be told that there was something wrong with me. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with, like, this is just what I'm feeling and it needs to come out. So fast forward, and you know, all of those patterns don't work out in relationships with like partners. They don't work out in friendships. They don't work out in the relationship with yourself. So therapy helped me realize like, okay, so we have to like unpack all of that, and you have to go back and work on being the person you needed growing up, and being able to reconcile all those times you wish you had somebody advocate for you, and figure out how to do that for yourself. And as I've continued to go back and kind of like patch and heal a lot of that hurt. It's also just like allowed me to be stronger in my relationships that I have currently, and recognize boundaries as a really healthy thing, recognize feelings as a really healthy thing, especially hard feelings. And what that's really allowed me to do is I don't feel like we're meant to be islands. And though I think it's important, especially if you have PTSD and trauma with like relationships, and especially like I have a lot of friends that are in the recovery community where there is a period of their lives they need to stay away completely from any environment that has alcohol or drugs or anything like that. And I respect that because it can be incredibly tempting, and it can be incredibly hard if you've been drinking for 20 years and then like you go into a bar and like you're really trying not to drink, but everybody around you, I don't know what that's like.
Right.
Yes, I've gone through my party phases, but I've never been like an addict.
Right.
So I don't know what it's like. However, I do know what it's like to be codependent and struggle in other ways. So, I had to separate myself from certain communities for some time and grow in my boundaries. But now I've gotten to a point where I can step back into different spaces. I can play shows in bars. I can play shows with people that I don't necessarily consider like close friends, but I can have like respectful connections and relationships with them without feeling like I need to do what they're doing, without feeling like I have to agree with everything that they're telling me I should agree with. And I think that that's one of the important things about boundaries, is that they allow you to coexist within different societal communities. Like people are just so different, and we need to be strong in who we are while also respecting who other people are and not judging or shaming anybody else, and also not doing that for ourselves. And it can feel hard, like boundaries are a hard thing, but once you get comfortable exercising them, like I really believe that that's what allows us to work well together and figure out where like people fit together. And everybody has different bandwidths. It's okay to go out and then come home at 10 o'clock. So yeah.
Yeah. And it gives you an opportunity to build community through the Mental Health Songwriter Nights. And I want to make sure we definitely spotlight this, because I think it's, again, so important, to continue having these conversations, especially among our circles where we're all creating something from zero, like as we're building artist platforms, creative businesses. And while that's happening, life is still happening. And we're still navigating, the challenges of living in 21st century society, but also everything that, all of our wiring, all of our previous traumas, all the things that we have to work through as human beings. And so how do the Songwriter Nights help build that community, foster that sense of support, and continue to get that message out there that these topics are important and something that need to be addressed?
Yeah. So this touches on the second reason, I guess, that I decided to pursue mental health even deeper. I saw the need for it in not only my friend groups and circles, but just in community and society as a whole. I just think it's so important. And after experiencing the growth and the healing that I experienced through pursuing mental health, I just really want that for people. I can't force that on anybody.
Right.
I can't make anybody decide that mental health is important or take it seriously. There's still a lot of people that are isn't therapy just for whack jobs? And I'm like, no.
Everyone comes to the lesson in their own time.
Yeah, I really believe everybody can benefit from therapy, from talking about their feelings in safe spaces, from having really good friends who create those spaces for you. So what I wanted to do, I am not a therapist. I am definitely not a mental health expert. I am just on a journey here. I wanted to create a space that allowed room for creativity and art with the theme of mental health. So I've done a lot of writers' rounds and shows out here, And I typically found myself being like the only person talking about mental health, and always felt like, like nobody wants to hear this. Nobody, but I still kept doing it. Like I would talk about these things and people would come up to me and be like, keep doing that. Like I really needed that song that like really brought a lot of healing to me from this experience. Like this is so amazing. I just don't hear a lot of this, but I knew there was more of it. So I wanted to basically create a space where people were attracted to share that kind of music, to share those stories, to connect and just grow that experience. And when I first started Mental Health Songwriter Nights, like it started off pretty small, but it's crazy how much it's grown and how many people it's attracting. There's people that reach out to me from outside of Nashville that want to be a part of them, different states.
Yeah. You've got a big artist network. I've noticed like on social media, a lot of artists are like, participating in this now, on social media and of course, at the events themselves.
Yeah. And like there's just so many people advocating for mental health that I'm like, it's wild how, I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this. I guess when you change the purpose and goal of a performance, the kind of artists and people that you'll attract, and the kinds of stories and experiences, there's a shift in the experience. So one of the things that I get from people who come out to our shows to purely like listen and observe and watch is like how healing it is. So there's something really special when there's somebody on stage talking about, let's say, bipolar disorder, and there's people in the audience who are like, oh my goodness, like I thought I was like the only one that struggled with this. Like nobody talks about bipolar disorder at my job. Nobody talks about bipolar disorder in my family. Like people make fun of me all the time because I even take it seriously. But I'm not saying I have bipolar disorder. I'm just using this as an example. Right. But when there's an artist on stage that's talking about bipolar disorder, their experiences, their challenges, and then they share impactful music that has to do with those experiences, I really believe that in knowing that like you're not alone and that there's other people that go through that, and that connection from like observer to performer or performer to observer, it just brings so much restoration, so much redemption, so much healing, and it just encourages people to know like there's nothing wrong with you, and that there's just so much room for people to connect, and there's people that are willing to listen, and there's people that are willing to talk about it, and there are spaces where you are invited to talk about these really hard things. And I think that the music industry is not doing that enough.
Agreed. And
I think when COVID happened in 2020, it just like shook things up for everybody, right? Like, I mean, music really was barely a thing.
Right. Live streams aplenty.
Live streams, yes.
Yep.
But everybody around here was like, are we ever going to be able to play like on stage again, live performances to like a bunch of people? Like, is that person to person performance going to happen? It did. We had faith. But it was scary. And I also think what it did for people in the music industry is it shook up priorities. And people really started asking themselves, okay, why do I create music? What kind of music do I want to make? They just became so much more intentional. But they also, at that time, there was so much isolation. So once things started opening back up, I wanted to just create these experiences that allowed for people to reconnect again, and come out with their friends, like have fun, come out, something to do, listen to music, but also like open up about their experiences through COVID, open up about the isolation that they have experienced. And it's been a dream of mine to have these events since before COVID happened. And I was always waiting for like the right time and the right venue. And in 2022, I was just in the downtown library, noticed that they had a coffee shop called the Copper Branch. Went in there to grab a coffee, and I looked in the corner and I saw that they had this little stage, and I just remember feeling stirred to ask, do you guys do shows here? And they said, yeah, we actually are looking for more artists to play. And they asked me to play like as my own artist, but then I asked them, okay, what if I have like mental health event here and I have multiple artists come out? And they said sure. So that's where I first started. It was in this little coffee shop downtown, and the owner was really passionate about mental health too, so I thought that that was like this synchronistic moment of alignment. And you know, what started off as this little show that had a few artists come out, a few people come out, has now expanded to these shows at places like City Winery, and Anzi Blue in Hillsborough Village, and who knows where they're going to go from there. But, you know, we went from like 10, 15 people coming out to our shows to now like almost 100 in a pretty short period of time. And it's just amazing, like, to me, how, you know, when you really lean into those places that you see a need and there isn't a lot of, and you want to like see more of it. Like, I found myself trying to find these communities, and once I figured out, okay, somebody needs to make them, okay, maybe it needs to be me, and you decide to create the environments that you're looking for, you start attracting those people.
Yeah.
And I have more friends that are like-minded, more friends that I actually like connect with, and more friends that support my mental health than I ever have in my entire life. And so I think, like, for anybody out there who feels like maybe, you know, they don't fit in, like, I want to encourage you to think about, well, maybe if you start something that like is in alignment with what you're looking for, you will attract people who also feel like they don't fit in, and then all of a sudden, like, you are the innovator of an entire like community. And I think that's really cool, and I've been told that that's kind of what's happening with my mental health nights. And I think what it's done for a lot of people in Nashville, and is starting to do for people outside of Nashville, is normalize us talking about mental health through our music, because I'm just seeing it happen now more and more. Like, outside of the mental health events, people are just feeling like empowered through our nights. They're feeling strengthened, they're feeling supported, and it's like, I know I've got this community of people who will back me up, and I will go out into the world and I will share my story of mental health.
I love it. I love it. It's so important because, to your earlier point, like, the music industry is not doing enough, and there aren't enough people willing to have these conversations. I mean, I've even been told, you know, because a few years ago, like, you know, I think immediately, like, at, you know, 2021, like, immediately after the onset of COVID, like, I definitely hit a rough patch, and I had people in the industry tell me, like, oh, you don't want to share that. Nobody's going to take you seriously as an entrepreneur. And, you know, as a male entrepreneur, like, there are people with that mindset of like, oh, what are you, weak or something? And it's like, no, we all go through these things, and we need to bring these things to light so we can find solutions together. You need community, you know? I mean, yeah, you first need to understand yourself, but you need community. You need to know that you're not the only one, that you're not alone, that, like, you know, there are people experiencing similar things to what you're experiencing, and maybe they manifest themselves in different ways, different habits, different behaviors, but, like, you know, everybody in the world is trying to heal from something. And up until COVID, you know, there really wasn't that conversation happening at all.
Yeah.
At all in the industry. And now, thanks to folks like you and other work that's happening, like, I'm glad to see more and more people willing to share and willing to also work toward their own solutions, willing to not only work toward their own solutions personally, but like, to figure out ways to help make this a little more navigable for the people around them. The resources, of course, like the Mental Health Songwriters Nights, and other things that have, come up since COVID have really not only brought it to light, but said, what are we going to do about it?
Absolutely.
How are we going to build community around this? So
yeah.
Commendable work.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm definitely not the only one who is working really hard to vocalize how important mental health is and normalize it. But I am very proud of this work, and I am very grateful for the opportunities that I am given to talk about it. Another way that the Mental Health Songwriter Nights is fostering community, and you touched on resources, is at every show we pick a mental health related organization to benefit. Most of the time they are like therapeutic resources, mental health centers, or mental health organizations. We've benefited Project Semicolon, To Write Love on Her Arms. We've benefited more local organizations as well, like the Refuge Counseling Center. We've benefited Mental Health America of the Mid-South. So there's a lot of these like larger scale organizations that are doing work on a larger scale in the field of mental health. Then I wanted to also benefit organizations on the local level that are doing work on a local scale with like people in our own like spaces and in Nashville. And then we also once in a while will benefit individuals. So when I say mental health related causes, it's essentially like we benefit needs. I believe that one of the biggest things in mental health that can be misunderstood is that like if it's not something that's like coming from like the DSM, like if it's not related to like, okay, I've got this like mental health problem, touching on anxiety, touching on depression, etc., and it's like more of like a practical issue, then it's not a mental health problem. And I think that's so not true. When you are dealing with like health issues, when you are dealing with money issues, when you are dealing with terrorist related issues, that all impacts your mental health.
Yeah.
So what I have chosen to do with these nights is, and I really believe this is going to continue to help people with their mental health, is meet people where they are. So I am incredibly passionate about making sure people feel like they aren't alone. And when one of the recent shootings happened in our country, in Uvalde, there was a lot of kids that needed support, a lot of families that needed support. And I just remember picking one of the GoFundMes, one of the kids, and benefiting them through our mental health night. And her name was Mia Cirillo. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. And I remember reading in her GoFundMe about how it was a school, she's a survivor of a school shooting. And whoever wrote up her GoFundMe discussed how she still had like shards of like bullets in her body, how she was unable to sleep and was waking up often, like panic attacks, like, she's definitely gonna be diagnosed with PTSD, I'm sure. And they even touched on how she's going to need therapeutic support. So she needed surgery. She needed, support for her family, and she needed therapeutic support, and probably so much more. And I'm like, I just felt so much compassion pour out of me for this person. And I'm like, okay, let's benefit them, because not only is this going to go towards like helping somebody get therapy, but also I believe like the surgery that she needs, like that's going to also benefit her. as well. So we chose to benefit Mia Cirillo, and then recently there was a local band called REVEL. They're a sister duo. And one of the sisters has a lot of health issues and is just racking up the medical bills. They are just like continuously growing. And she just shared her story. She didn't ask us to benefit them, but she shared her story with me, and it impacted me so deeply. And I saw like how it was weighing on her, and how it was impacting her daily life, and decided like, okay, let's benefit them at a show as well. And so we raised some money to be able to go towards their medical bills. And I know for a fact that that's benefited their mental health as well, because I know for me, if I have support with my medical bills, that's quite a weight off of my shoulders. And they've also expressed like how much it means to them to have some of that financial support as well. So we benefit people on like a national kind of grand scale, on a local scale, community scale, and then on a one-on-one scale. And I feel like each of those are so important. And it's just always so cool to me how giving people are, regardless of like what level that is, and how people can like just the compassion that comes out of people's hearts. It's incredible. And as of our last mental health night, we've raised over $3,400 for people, for mental health related causes.
Well done. Where can people, if they want to support the Songwriters Nights, they want to support the different causes that you support, where can people learn more and do that?
Yeah, you can find us at our social media pages. We're primarily on Instagram and Facebook currently, Mental Health Songwriter Nights. And I also have a website, so you can find mental health Songwriter Nights information on my website at www.zhaklina.com/MHSN. And you spell my name Zhaklina.
All right. Well, make sure you go check it out and support everything Zhaklina is doing with the Mental Health Songwriter Nights. We are coming up on time, but a couple more questions. Of course, you're an artist as well, and you've already played your first show of the year, so off to the races in that regard too. What does the rest of 2024 look like for you?
Yeah. We have a lot of incredible shows in store with our mental health events. We have our first non-ticketed event coming up January 26th at Sunny's Clubhouse. And then we have our first ticketed event on February 5th at Onzy Blue in Hillsborough Village. And there's a lot more shows coming after that, but those are our first couple that we're preparing for. I have officially established a team with Mental Health Songwriter Nights, and I'm really excited about all of the growth that we're going to experience by having a little more support, because this is a lot of work. So it's really exciting to have people come to me wanting to help and be a part of what we're doing. I have music coming out. My first single is coming out not this Friday, but the following Friday. It's called MDBM, which stands for Money Don't Buy Me. And I'm really excited about that song. It's all about how, especially as artists, we can be bought out of writing the music we want to write, writing from an authentic space, and being like the authentic artist that you've always wanted to be for the sake of like making more money. And so this is just kind of like a powerful mantra of just like, you won't buy my authenticity, essentially. And so I'm really excited about my single release. And then I'm also releasing the final EP to my 17 Reasons Why EP series, which launched in I released it in 2019. I started releasing the series in 2019, but I had started writing the songs in 2017. So it's been quite a long journey, but I'm releasing the final EP to that series this spring. And it's all about raising awareness for mental health. And it's essentially 17 different songs that each have a reason for why you matter. And what I did there was I took the 13 Reasons Why series and flipped it. So 13 Reasons Why, if you've seen that series, it talks about 13 reasons why this person didn't feel like they belonged and ultimately took their life. And I have a very spiritual connection with the number 17. I really believe it means you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And I started this huge project, and it's 17 reasons why you are where you're supposed to be. You do belong. You do matter. So I'm so excited to be wrapping up that project, and I have a lot of really inspiring content that's going to be going along with this final EP that I'll be releasing in the spring. There's a lot of really new music in store. A lot of awesome performances and shows coming up, and a lot of art coming your way.
Amazing. So between your artistry and the Mental Health Songwriter Nights and all the amazing work there, like, you've got a lot going on. How do you give yourself a break? How do you practice self-care?
Yeah. Work in progress for sure, because I have this tension within myself of like, sometimes I feel like I overwork myself and I can get really close to burnout. And then the moment I give myself 15 minutes to relax, my brain can't stop thinking of my never-ending to-do list.
Oh, I know that.
So it's like a real internal battle over here.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's times where I feel like I can't really rest unless I know I've checked off at least half of that to-do list by a certain time on a day. And what I've had to learn to do, honestly, is show myself grace.
Mm-hmm.
Become less of a perfectionist and feel grateful for the opportunity to accomplish what I can in a day. And then really be okay with the limits that my body has, be okay with the limits that my mind has. I've learned of the term bandwidth through therapy, and how important it is to listen to what your bandwidth is telling you, because if you burn yourself out and stretch out too much, I don't think that your art is going to be as good. I don't think you're going to be as kind of a person. I can definitely tell when I'm getting more irritable, less patient. I probably need some time off. So I have regularly incorporated exercise. Hot yoga is really important to me, and that is a couple hours of my week that is just focused on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to be doing something very engaging that's involving my entire body, my mind, my heart, and my soul in order for me to get my mind off of my to-do list. And hot yoga is one of those things for me.
Yeah.
If you've ever done it, it's very engaging.
Yes, it is. Yep.
And it's been so healing, and it's actually helped me with my mental health. I have a lot of anxiety, and through hot yoga, there's something about sweating out all of your toxins regularly that can actually really help people who have anxiety. That's a whole other podcast for another day.
Part 2 coming soon.
But exercise,
Mm-hmm.
that's me time.
Yes.
And then my husband has helped me coin a term for myself, and it's called spaceship. So essentially, when I'm feeling overstimulated, because that happens, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I say I need spaceship. And sometimes that looks like taking 15 minutes to myself to just do some breathing exercises. Sometimes that looks like taking a couple hours to read my Bible, to read a book, to watch a show, just something that turns my brain off from work and allows me to tune into either full relaxation mode, which is essentially just watching a show or sleeping, or something that's more of a relaxing endeavor, like learning about God, or reading a book that I'm really interested in. Recently, I don't go on a whole lot of trips. I work a lot, but I work very hard to be able to go on very fun trips when I do. And my husband and I got back from Hawaii last week. And that was an incredible experience where I just remember telling everybody I am so excited to go to Hawaii and just be a starfish the entire time. And that's exactly what I did. I was essentially a starfish. I just like laid on the beach quite a bit. And I think that when you trust that you are doing your best every day and you work on that aspect of grace and compassion for yourself, you start to experience yourself normalizing rest and also seeing the value in it. Because after I gave myself like a week off from work and like being able to just like enjoy myself, have fun, get rest, soak up the sun, I came back and I just felt so much more energized and ready to hit the ground running. And so I think that there is this like really powerful experience in rest that allows you to be even more productive when you go into like all of the work that you do.
Amazing. This has been such a joy, Zhaklina. One more question before we sign off. If there's one lesson that you could go back and teach young Zhaklina, or perhaps somebody, who's just kind of embarking on their journey, that would have helped you at a younger age, more toward the beginning, what would that lesson be?
Great question. It would be that my voice matters. I think as children, it's so important for parents to encourage their children to speak up. I think it's really important to value a child's voice. While, children may not have the same reasoning skills, they definitely don't, as adults, we need to emphasize that their opinions and their thoughts hold value and not make so many things about like whether or not they're right or wrong. And I think that's what really allows individuals to grow up and be confident adults, be healthy adults, because we all have a voice, and that starts like from the moment you're born.
Great stuff. Thank you for coming on the show today. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me.
What a first guest of the year, by the way. This was fantastic. This has been the Quinn Spinn. 2 N's in Quinn, 2 N's in Spin. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and more. Also on Instagram at Quinn Spinn Official, on Threads at Quinn Spinn Official, and on TikTok at The Quinn Spinn, because it was available and I wasn't locked out like I was on Instagram. Underground Music Collective, our central hub for all things independent music, creativity, community, and more. UMCNashville.com. Also find us on the socials, Instagram, Threads, Facebook. I guess we're still on X, even though I'm not really there anymore. LinkedIn, TikTok, all the places. The UMC 20 Spotify playlist is up and running every Tuesday, updated with 20 fresh tracks and the latest episode of this podcast. And we've got plenty more in store. Also, check out the UMC Academy if you want to learn how to go from artist to entrepreneur, and check out our Underdogs community at Underground Music Collective as well. Revel 9's All Become going to take us out like it brought us in. Grab some muffins on your way out.